Hi, my name is Bill Priestley, and welcome to the Dream Job Factory YouTube channel. This is something that I've been looking forward to putting together for quite some time. And here for video number 1, I just thought I'd give you a little bit of an introduction about who I am and what the Dream Job Factory is. As far as I'm concerned, a long time ago, I think I was 12 years old, my father asked me that question that every teenager, maybe even preteen, gets: what do you want to do with your life? And the gut answer that I had at the time was, I want to be a sports writer. And I thought that would be the end of the conversation. I was wrong. Because like any good sports writer, he came with a great follow-up and he said, well, how many sports writers do you read? My grandfather had given me a subscription to Sports Illustrated the previous Christmas, and I love Sports Illustrated, but I love Sports Illustrated because of the pictures and because of the graphics. I didn't really like it so much for the writing. I wasn't kind of a read person. But that's what I liked. I thought that I could do sports writing because, hey, you know what? You got to go to the games for free. And somebody paid you to write about the games. Those were reasons that that was why I wanted to do it. And sadly, that kind of ended the conversation right then and there. Fast forward a few years, college. Guess what? I'm the sports editor of the campus newspaper. And one day, one of the writers that writes for sports, he's also the sports director of the campus radio station, comes in and says, hey, Bill, you want to come and we're doing a women's basketball game on the air tonight. You want to come and do stats for us? Meaning, you want to come and take points, rebounds, assists, trends, that kind of thing, but not be on the air. And I said, sure, just as long as you don't put me on the air, I'll be fine. It'll be great. And we went to the game that night, and I went to a very small school, and we were playing a very, very big school. In fact, a school so big that just a few years ago, it happened to win a national championship in women's basketball. Nevertheless, we played that team that night, and our little team beat that big team, not by a little, but by a lot. And there was one point in the game where we were up by, I don't know, I think it was 10 or 12 or so. And our star player had 5 3-pointers. She had 5 3-pointers in the game. And all of a sudden, they left her wide open on the one side of the floor. And one of the other players saw her. Actually, she was double teamed in the corner. And they said, throw it cross court. And she just jumped up out of bounds in the air and just baseball pass over the cross to the other side of the court. And the other person, our great shooting guard, caught it, shot it, made the 3-pointer. The place went up in smoke. I mean, it was so loud in there. And I realized I had the headset on, but I didn't have, my mic wasn't on, obviously. And I was listening to my friend do the game, and I realized at that particular moment that he didn't care about what his mom thought he was thinking or thought he was saying or what his friends thought he was saying. He just was trying to paint as good a picture as he possibly could of what was going on in the gym at that particular time. And I realized 2 things. Number 1, I could do that. Number 2, I could do it better than him, or at least I thought I could. And if you actually backtrack back to that time when my dad asked me that question about what do you want to do with your life, and if I had said sportscaster instead of sports writer, and he asked me, well, how many sportscasters do you know? Keep in mind, at that particular time, there's only 3, maybe 4 networks. I could probably name off 15 or 20 of the sportscasters that were on television. In fact, I could not only name them, I could tell you what they were good at, what they were not good at, what sports they are best at, what sports they shouldn't do. I mean, I really kept an eye on this thing, maybe subconsciously, but I was really intrigued by this particular profession called sportscasting, even though I didn't want to do it because I had a natural aversion to microphones and cameras. Obviously, I've gotten over it. So that night, actually, that made me think about what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And I decided then and there that I wanted to become an NCAA Division I sportscaster. Extremely long story short, 18 years later, I got the job to being a full-time NCAA Division I sportscaster at a Division I institution in the state of North Carolina. And for 5 years, I absolutely loved that job. Now, over the course of those 18 years, I realized that if there was something that I could do perhaps for other people to help them get to where they wanted to go, that was something I wanted to do because I realized what my dream job was. And even if I hadn't gotten there, I still wanted to help other people figure that out. And that kind of blossomed about halfway through when I was a high school history teacher in the state of North Carolina. And I happened to assign to my students something called a passion paper. And it was a paper on anything you wanted to do, any subject you wanted to do. The requirement was you had to be really, really interested, or if not, passionate about that particular subject. And I was a history teacher, so it was a research project. So you had to do where the thing was, where the thing is now, and where the thing is going. And so that's what the project was about. And I got some amazing papers. It was a paper assignment, and the biggest criticism I got from my students was, "I wish you hadn't held us to a 10-page limit, because I could have written for days." That was the worst thing I heard about that particular project. Well, a few months later, I'm in the classroom. I think it's kind of after hours, and some of my students are milling about, and they're talking about what's going to happen after high school. And their parents were talking to them about college, and these people are sophomores that I'm teaching, and they're about to become juniors. And so I said, "Why don't you do something related to your passion paper?" And I singled out one of them in particular. Said, "What's something that you really want to know, that you really want to, that you talk about, that you are really drawn towards?" And she said, "Well, travel. I mean, travel is something that I really like." And I said, "What's something you're really good at?" And she said, "Well, I've been told I'm pretty good at writing." And I said, "Well, why don't you become a travel writer?" Her jaw hit the floor. "You can do that? Seriously? You can do that?" Yeah. And so we started going around the room, and people started talking about what their interests are and what their abilities are. And I started to come up with this idea. And eventually I got to the point where I thought, you know what, I could help out young people in this particular way if I figured out kind of how a dream job could be put together. And a couple of years before I actually got the job at that particular institution, I became a graduate student at that institution. One of my stepping stones there was becoming a GA, a graduate assistant for broadcasting, for that institution. And while I was there, I got my master's degree in education. And that master's degree was basically centered around how do you help young people figure out what they want to do with their lives. And so I came up with the formula that makes the Dream Job Factory. And that's something that I'm very proud of, and that I want to continue to teach. And I've been able to work on it in the years since then. I graduated in 2012. As of this taping, that's 9 years ago. And I've continued to work on it and perfect it, and been able to put out and help coach some kids and help talk to people about what it is that they want to do with their lives. But there's another interesting caveat to this story, and that is going back to when I was a senior in high school. It's way back in 1993, if I can date myself. What happened in 1993 was I went on a camping trip with 8 other people, 7 students, and 1 teacher. It was a spring break trip from a high school. And the deal was that a lot of the coaches, because we had spring break that was so long, they didn't want us to go home and sit on the couch and veg out and watch TV for a week. So they said, well, let's formulate some trips. And so I think there was a canoeing trip, and there was a hiking trip that went out, and I went on the hiking trip. And unbeknownst to us, unfortunately, and this is about a 45-minute story that I'm going to distill into about 30 seconds, we got caught by the biggest snowstorm that has hit the eastern seaboard in 100 years. You look it up. It's on Wikipedia. I believe it's called the snowstorm of the century, or the blizzard of 93. It was it was like a snow hurricane. It stretched from Cuba all the way to Newfoundland in one day. And we were right smack in the middle of it. And I had a sleeping bag that was guaranteed to keep me warm, provided the temperature didn't drop below 40 degrees. It dropped below -30 one night. And coming out of that experience, again, extremely long story short, realizing that I possibly could have died, that's made me more and more conscious about being able to take advantage of opportunities in life, because you never know. You really honestly never know. We had no clue that thing was coming. Unfortunately, we didn't have weather radios at that particular time. So that's kind of what has pushed me to this point, is that I want to be able to help you figure out what it is that you want to do with your life, and I want to help you go after it. And that is the impetus of the Dream Job Factory. We're focusing dreams into careers. and being able to help you do what it is that is exactly what you want to do, something that is almost tailor-made, that fits for your interests and your abilities. So subscribe to the channel, because we've got a lot of videos coming up, and also join the Facebook group, which is at facebook.com/groups/The Dream Job Blueprint. And the Dream Job Blueprint is the method that I teach to help you figure out what it is that you want to do with your life. So I'll end it with this, in this video anyway, with this particular story about that long 18-year road that took me to get from that night in that basketball game to eventually becoming an NCAA Division I sportscaster. And that was about 9 years into it. And I was out at a sportscasters camp out in Los Angeles, California. And I had been to this camp before, but I'd come back, and a lot of the people that I was with in the camp when I came the first time were actually big-time sportscasters. I mean, they were announcers in the NBA and the NHL and Major League Baseball and national sports talk radio to an extent. And I hadn't made it. I was still doing high school games at that particular point, but I was still firing. And then when I realized this, I wrote my then girlfriend an email, and it said that you know what, maybe I should do something else, because it's all worked out for everybody else that I knew, or at least most of everybody else I knew that had kept at it. And maybe I should stop. Maybe I should try to find something else to do. And I expected her to respond with the same kind of, okay, you fought the good fight, we'll find you something else to do. But she didn't do that. She wrote me a 4-line email that contains 8 words in it, which I have right over here on my wall. 8 words in it that forever changed my outlook on life with regards to going after something that you really, really want. And she said this: never let your dream die before you do. I'll repeat that. Never let your dream die before you do. And that was all the inspiration I ever needed, because it would be another 9 years before I got to where I wanted to go. Let me help you get to where you want to go. Follow us, subscribe to us, get on the Facebook group. This is an amazing ride. I have had an absolute blast putting this together, and I want to be able to share with you how you can get from where you are to where you want to be, so long as you never let your dream die before you do. Thanks.